In the heart of Abuja, a tall glass building shimmered under the sun. It was called Silver Garden, the finest restaurant in the district. Every day, shiny SUVs parked at its gates. Inside, men in gold watches dined on expensive meals. Chandeliers sparkled above them. The music was soft, the lights were warm. Everything looked perfect, but in the shadows, someone moved quietly. Her name was Ruth. She wore a brown apron and rubber shoes. She wiped tables, swept floors, scrubbed toilets, and left before anyone remembered she was ever there. No one asked where she came from. No one noticed when she left. She was just the cleaner. But Ruth had a habit. Every night, just before she left, she'd knock gently on the kitchen door. Her voice was always soft. "Please, is there any leftover food?" She never begged, never demanded. If there was food, she took it quietly. If there wasn't, she simply nodded. "Thank you." Then she walked away with 2 small plastic bags. No one followed her. No one cared, except for one man, Mr. Kalu, the owner of the Silver Garden. People called him Sir. He wore navy suits that never wrinkled. His shoes clicked across marble floors. He didn't talk much, but he noticed everything, and that night, as he left his office, he saw her, standing near his car, not too close, not too far, just waiting. Something about her made him stop. She looked small in the empty car park. Her head was down, her hands folded, her body still. He narrowed his eyes. "Who is that?" He started walking toward her. That single moment was the beginning of something neither of them could have expected. Sir Kay stopped a few feet from her. His SUV gave a soft beep in the background. Ruth didn't move. She kept her head down, hands folded, still as stone. "You work in the cleaning section, right?" he asked. She raised her head for a second. "Yes, sir. My name is Ruth." Her voice was care, but tired in a way that said she hadn't rested in years. "What are you doing here this late?" he asked. She hesitated, then took a tiny breath. "Please, sir, if there's any leftover food, may I take some home?" Sir Kay blinked. No request for money, no complaint, just food. He looked at her again. Her uniform was clean but old. Her shoes were worn down. Her eyes avoided his. He nodded. "Okay, thank you, sir," she whispered. Then she turned and walked back into the kitchen. Sir Kay stood still, the car door open, the night silent. Why would someone ask for leftovers? She worked a full shift, and still had to ask for scraps. He got into his SUV but didn't start it. He sat there, thinking. Her voice echoed in his head. Soft, careful, not weak, just worn out. There was something in her eyes, a weight, a story, one he didn't understand yet. He looked toward the restaurant door. Then he made a decision. "I'll follow her." 10 minutes passed. Sir Kay stayed in the SUV, engine off, lights off, just waiting. Then the kitchen door opened. Ruth stepped out. She held 2 plastic bags. Nothing heavy. She held them close like they were precious. She began walking, fast, like she was trying to disappear. Sir Kay turned the key, engine on, headlights off. He followed from a distance, far enough not to be noticed, close enough not to lose her. She walked to a nearby road, then entered a rusty yellow bus. She didn't look back. Sir Kay followed, through winding roads, through dimly lit streets, past broken buildings and flickering lights. The city faded into silence and darkness. After nearly 30 minutes, the bus stopped. Ruth got down, still holding the plastic bags. She walked into a narrow path, untarred, lonely, forgotten. Sir Kay parked far behind. He stepped out, walked slowly, quietly. Then he saw it, a broken-down building. The walls cracked like dry clay, the roof half gone. No windows, no color, no life. Ruth walked up to the door. She knocked gently, and suddenly, the door opened. 2 little girls ran out barefoot, laughing, shouting, "Mommy, Mommy, you're back." Ruth dropped the bags, knelt, held them both tight. She smiled, but her eyes were tired. Sir Kay watched from the shadows. His breath caught. She has children. His heart beat faster. A lump formed in his throat. She wasn't just a worker. She was a mother, fighting silently, alone. Sir Kay remained frozen in place, hidden in the shadows, his heart pounding louder than the night crickets. He stared through a cracked section of the wall, watched as Ruth carried her 2 daughters back inside. The broken door creaked shut behind them. Silence returned to the night. But Saki stepped closer, careful. He peeked through a broken window, and what he saw next, it left a crack in his chest. Ruth sat cross-legged on the floor, no chairs, just an old mat. The walls were bare. The room smelled of dust and survival. She opened the plastic bags. Inside, only jar of rice and 1 piece of chicken. She cut everything in half, placed the food into 2 small plastic plates. Her daughters clapped quietly, excited. They grabbed their plates and began eating like they hadn't eaten in days. Their eyes sparkled. Their hands moved fast. They laughed with their mouths full. But Ruth, she didn't eat. She just sat there, watching them, smiling, her stomach silent, her soul loud. Saki swallowed hard. He kept watching, not out of pity, but confusion. She worked so hard, and still came home to nothing, yet she smiled like her world was full. He looked down at his shiny shoes, polished, expensive. Suddenly, they felt like an insult. He pressed his hand to his chest. Something there was changing, shifting, breaking. She didn't eat, he whispered. She gave it all to them. Tears touched his eyes. Hot, real. He turned away from the window, stood in the dark, let the weight of what he saw settle in. Then slowly, he walked back to his SUV, opened the door, sat down, and didn't drive. He just sat there, thinking, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel rich. He just felt human. The sky was still dark when Ruth opened her eyes. The rooster hadn't crowed. The wind outside was cold. She turned slowly. Her 2 daughters were curled beside her, sleeping peacefully on the mat. She smiled, touched their hair, whispered, "Time to wake up, my angels." The girls stirred, rubbed their eyes, and sat up yawning. "Mummy, are we going to school today?" one asked. "Yes, my love. Let's get ready." Ruth carried a plastic bucket outside. She fetched water from a container, poured it into a shallow bowl. One by one, she bathed her girls. Careful, gentle, like she was washing gold. She dried them with a torn towel, rubbed their arms, helped them wear their school uniforms. The fabric was faded, but clean, pressed with love. She combed their hair, tied 2 little ponytails, placed tiny ribbons at the ends. They looked in the mirror, and smiled, not because they had much, but because their mother made them feel enough. Ruth opened the nylon bag. From last night, just a small scoop of rice remained. She warmed it quickly over a tiny gas burner, served it in 2 bowls, watched as her girls ate every bite. She didn't eat. Again, when they finished, she packed their books, placed small water bottles into their bags, held their hands, and stepped outside. The sun was just waking up. The air was fresh. The day had begun. They walked down the road together, passing old shacks, smiling neighbors. The school wasn't fancy. No gate, no painted walls. But the girls ran into it, like it was a castle, happy, hopeful. Ruth knelt and hugged them tightly. "Be good girls. I'll see you soon." Then she turned away, shoulders squared, back straight. She had to get to work on time. She had floors to scrub, tables to wipe, and dignity to protect. At the Silver Garden, the sun filtered through the tall windows. Everything gleamed. The kitchen buzzed. Waiters polished silverware. Chefs prepared their stations. Ruth arrived quietly. She changed into her brown uniform, tied her apron tightly, tucked her hair neatly into a scarf. She didn't speak much, just got to work. She swept every inch of the floor, mopped beneath every table, wiped every glass surface, until it sparkled. She moved fast, efficient, focused. To anyone watching, she was just doing her job. But inside she was running on love, not rest. Across the building, in a tall office with glass walls, Saki sat still. He watched the staff move through the restaurant, but his eyes kept finding Ruth. He couldn't stop thinking, couldn't forget. That cracked wall, those plastic bags, the girls with shining eyes, the food she didn't eat. He leaned back in his leather chair, closed his, and then, he reached for the phone. "Get me the HR manager," he said. A knock came shortly after. "Good morning, sir," the HR manager greeted. Saki didn't waste time. We need to do better, he said. Sir, our workers, he said calmly, some of them go home to nothing. We have to raise their pay. The room fell quiet. Start this month, he added. No one who works here should ever go to bed hungry. Yes, sir, the HR replied quickly. Saki nodded, dismissed him with a gentle wave. Then he turned toward the window, watched Ruth from afar. She was wiping a glass table, smiling faintly to herself. She still had no idea, but something big was about to change. The days moved slowly, but Ruth kept moving faster. Each morning, she arrived early, tied her apron, picked up her broom. She swept under chairs, polished table legs, mopped till the marble floors reflected light. She never sighed, never slouched, never stopped smiling. And every evening, when the last customer left, she waited. She waited till the restaurant quieted down, then walked gently to the kitchen. Please, she'd say, is there any leftover food today? Some days, there was plenty. Some days barely enough to cover a plate. But she always accepted with gratitude. Thank you, she'd whisper, and she'd leave, 2 plastic bags in hand. She never asked for more. She never complained. The other staff barely noticed her routine. To them, it was just Ruth, being Ruth. But Saki noticed everything. He watched her, from the glass balcony above the dining hall. He saw how she carried herself with dignity, even when her shoes were worn thin. He started asking quiet questions. How long had she worked here? Why had no one paid attention to her struggles? And every evening, he stayed a little later, just to watch her leave. She didn't know he was watching, didn't know that every step she took was planting a seed in the heart of a man who had everything, except understanding. Saki sat in his car some nights, thinking, wondering, how many others are like her, how many more go home to nothing, after working so hard. The thought wouldn't leave him. It haunted him, moved through his chest, like a slow ache. Ruth's quiet strength had become a mirror, and what he saw in that reflection, it humbled him. It was a bright morning. The restaurant smelled of fresh coffee and cleaning spray. The air buzzed with movement. Ruth had just finished wiping the windows when the head cook approached. He wasn't smiling. Boss wants to see you, he said. Ruth turned quickly. Her eyes widened. Me? Yes. Mr. Kalu, go to his office. She wiped her hands on her apron. Her heart began to pound. Did she do something wrong? She walked through the quiet hallway toward the executive floor, past the framed awards, past the flower vases she often dusted. She reached a tall wooden door, paused, took a deep breath, then knocked. Come in, a calm voice called. She stepped inside. Her eyes didn't lift. Good morning, sir. Sit down, Ruth, Sir Kerr said gently. She sat slowly, hands trembling in her lap, her eyes fixed on the floor. For a long second, there was silence, only the hum of the AC. Then he spoke. Ruth, I followed you one night. Her head snapped up. You followed me? He nodded. I saw where you live. I saw your 2 daughters. Her lips trembled. Her hands shook. I didn't mean to do anything wrong, sir. I just wanted to feed my children. Tears escaped her eyes. She wiped them quickly, ashamed. Sir Kerr leaned forward. You did nothing wrong. He looked straight at her. You are a good mother, and a strong woman. Ruth's shoulders dropped. The tension in her chest softened. No one had ever said those words to her. She didn't speak. She couldn't, but inside her heart, something cracked open. A little bit of hope. Sir Kerr sat back and smiled kindly. Now let me tell you what I plan to do. The next day, Ruth was called back to the office. She walked in slowly, still unsure. Sir Kerr stood by the window, his hands in his pockets. He turned as she entered. Ruth, he said, I have something for you. He handed her a document. She held it with shaking hand. Read the first line. Promotion. Personal assistant to the CEO. She looked up, stunned. Sir, you've earned it, he said. Starting today, your salary will increase, and you'll work directly with me. Her knees felt weak. Tears filled her eyes. She covered her mouth with her hands. But he wasn't done. He picked up a brown envelope from his desk. I've also bought you and your girls a small apartment, he said. Nothing fancy, but clean, safe, and yours. Ruth couldn't hold back anymore. She dropped to her knees, crying, not from pain, but from relief. "Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. You don't have to beg for leftovers anymore," Sir Kerr said. "Your children will have beds, lights, a place to study." She pressed both hands to her chest. Her voice shook. "Is this really for me?" He nodded. "You deserve it, Ruth." He opened another drawer, pulled out a small white envelope. "Buy something nice for dinner tonight," he said. She accepted it like it was gold, her tears still falling, but her heart finally rising. That night the small broken room smelled different. It smelled of jollof rice, real chicken, peace. Her daughters giggled on the floor. "Mommy, so much chicken." Ruth watched them eat with joy in her eyes. And this time, she joined them. Morning came with a soft breeze. The sun peeked gently through the old curtains. Ruth was already awake. She sat in silence on the edge of the mat, watching her daughters sleep peacefully. Her heart was light. Her hands rested calmly on her knees. A knock came on the door. Not loud, just enough to interrupt the stillness. She opened it slowly. A man in a dark uniform stood outside. "Good morning, madam," he said. "I'm here from Mr. Kalu. He sent me to drive you and your girls." Ruth blinked, confused. "Drive us where?" "To your new home." She stood still. The words hung in the air like perfume. Then she turned back inside. "Girls," she called, "go pack your things. We're moving." The room filled with tiny footsteps, laughter, excitement. The girls rushed to gather their little clothes and books. Ruth folded their few belongings into a small bag. She looked around the room one last time. The cracked wall, the broken fan, the mat, the memories. Then she closed the door softly and walked out. They entered the car. The seats were soft. The air smelled of leather and lavender. Her girls giggled the whole way, peering out the windows, as if the city had never looked so bright. After a short drive, the car stopped in front of a small cream-colored building. Fresh paint, flower pots by the door, curtains in the windows. Her daughters ran out first. "Mommy, look, there's a balcony." Ruth followed them in, room by room. A living room with cushion, a clean kitchen, 2 small bedrooms, soft mattresses, running water, electric light. She stood in the center of the room, closed her eyes, and whispered, "Thank you, God." It didn't feel like luck. It felt like grace. And this time, her story had taken a turn towards something brighter. Ruth opened a cupboard slowly. Inside were bags of rice, spices, oil, tomatoes. She smiled. A real, deep, soul-filled smile. She wasn't cooking with scraps tonight. She was cooking with choice. Her daughters played on the new living room carpet, throwing pillows, laughing without worry. Ruth stirred the jollof rice gently, added pieces of well-seasoned chicken. The pot sizzled with promise. The smell drifted through the small apartment. It smelled like home. When the food was ready, she served it in 3 plates. Clean plates. Not plastic bags. Not shared bowls. Her daughters ran to the table, sat properly, grinning from ear to ear. "Mummy, this is a feast," one of them shouted. "I've never seen this much chicken," the other giggled. Ruth sat down beside them. She picked up her spoon, and for the first time in many nights, she ate with them. No holding back, no pretending she wasn't hungry. She chewed slowly, savoring every bite. The girls talked between mouthfuls, about school, about the soft bed, about the color of the new curtains. But Ruth barely spoke. She just watched them, and let her eyes glisten. Because this wasn't just a meal. It was a quiet victory, a plate of proof that things were finally changing. After dinner, the girls helped wash the plates. Ruth tucked them into their new beds. Soft blankets, pillows, smiles still on their faces. Then she sat on the living room floor, hands on her lap, eyes lifted upward. "Thank you," she whispered, not just to God, but to life, to grace, to the kindness that had found her at last. And somewhere across the city, Sir Kay sat in his own home, looking at the same sky, wondering if she was smiling. She was, and the night felt different now. Title: The morning sun pushed softly through the window blinds. Ruth stretched her arms slowly. For once she hadn't woken to an alarm, or the anxiety of being late. Her daughters still slept, tangled in soft blankets, breathing deeply. The quiet was new, unfamiliar but sweet. Then her phone rang. She reached for it gently. The screen lit up. Sakelu. Her heart skipped. She quickly answered. "Good morning, sir." Sakei's voice was calm. "Ruth, how are you and the girls?" "We're fine, sir. Thank you again for everything." A pause. Then his voice came again. "Don't come in today." Her breath caught. "Sir, take the day off," he said. "Rest. Enjoy your new home. Make something sweet. Laugh with your daughters." Ruth held the phone close. Tears formed instantly. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. "You've earned it, Ruth. All of it." The call ended. She looked around her living room. The quiet hum of the fridge. The clean floor. The bowls stacked neatly in the dish rack. She walked to the kitchen. Opened the cupboard again. Took out rice and fresh vegetables. The girls woke soon after. Still in their pajamas. Their hair messy, but their faces glowing. "Mummy, what are you cooking?" one asked. "Our first breakfast in this house," she replied, smiling wide. She reached out and took their hands. "Before we eat, let's thank God again." They closed their eyes, said a simple prayer. 3 voices, 1 heart. That morning they didn't rush. They didn't panic. They just lived. The kind of morning Ruth had dreamed of for years. The kind of peace she thought she'd never feel again. And somewhere deep inside her, she knew this was just the beginning. A new chapter. One built, not on pain, but on possibility. Back at the Silver Garden, the pace hadn't changed. The waiters moved swiftly. The chef shouted over boiling pots. The front desk rang with orders. But Sakei was unusually quiet. He sat alone in his office. The same view, the same sound, but everything felt different now. His eyes drifted to Ruth's old cleaning station. Empty now, temporarily, but never unnoticed again. He picked up his cup of tea, took a slow sip, and exhaled. He remembered her face, tears on her cheeks, the way she held that promotion letter, like it was sacred. He remembered the cracked walls of that old house, the barefoot girls, the joy in their eyes over leftover food. He pressed his fingers together, leaning on his desk. "I thought I was successful," he whispered to himself, "but I never knew what real strength looked like, until I met her." His phone buzzed. It was the HR department. "Sir, should we continue the pay raise plan for all junior staff?" Sakei didn't hesitate. "Yeah, raise it across the board. No delays." He ended the call, sat back in his chair. Ruth had changed something in him, not through her words, but through her actions, her silence, her sacrifices. And that realization didn't make him feel weak. It made him feel awake. He stood up, walked toward the balcony, looked down at the restaurant floor, the same marble tiles she used to mop every morning, the tables she wiped till they gleamed. He could almost see her there, moving quietly, with purpose. And now, she would return with new clothes, new shoes, a new life. He smiled, just a little, and whispered, "She deserves it, not just because she worked hard, but because she never gave up, even when no one saw her." The sun rose slowly, peeking through the light curtains of Ruth's new apartment. She was already awake. She sat by the window, sipping tea, her daughters still curled up under soft blankets. Their small backpacks rested by the door, ready for school. There was no rush, no panic, just peace. She made a small breakfast, boiled eggs, warm bread, sweet tea. The girls yawned as they walked into the kitchen. Their eyes sparkled. "Good morning, Mummy," they said in unison. "Good morning, my angels," Ruth replied. They sat at the table, a real table, not the floor. They ate quietly, swinging their legs beneath the chairs. "Are we going to school now?" one asked. "Yes, love. And guess what?" The girls leaned in. "There's a new school, a better one. You start next week." Their jaws dropped. "Really?" Ruth nodded. Miss Kalu made arrangements. The younger daughter clapped her hands. "We'll have books, real uniforms." "Yes," Ruth said, trying not to cry. "Real books, real shoes, real everything." After breakfast, they got dressed in their current uniforms, still neat, still pressed. Ruth walked them to school, hand in hand. Other mothers passed by, but Ruth stood taller today. When they reached the school gate, she knelt down, hugged them tight. "Be good, be kind, and always try your best." The girls nodded, beamed. They ran off, their laughter floating in the morning air. Ruth stood still, watching, smiling. Then she turned and walked back home, not because she had nowhere to go, but because for the first time she had a day off, a home to return to, a kitchen to cook in, a future to plan. This was her new routine, not one of survival, but of quiet joy. Day. Sir Kay sat at his desk again, but he wasn't reading reports or reviewing numbers. He was scrolling through his phone, old pictures, news headlines, staff schedules. Then he stopped. He opened a file, Ruth's profile, her start date, her years of service. She had worked at the Silver Garden for 5 years, never late, never disciplined, always present, but never once had anyone noticed. He tapped his pen against the table. Then he picked up the intercom. "Call a staff meeting this Friday," he said. "I want everyone there, sir, everyone." He stood up, walked to the window again. The city pulsed outside, busy, unaware, but inside his mind, everything had slowed down. He knew this wasn't just about Ruth. It was about everyone like her, those who worked quietly, lived humbly, and fought silently. That afternoon, he asked HR to create a new program, a fund for single parents, emergency support, housing assistance. It wasn't charity, it was dignity. It was what people like Ruth had earned tenfold. The idea spread quickly. Managers discussed it in corners. Staff whispered about the change. They didn't know the full story, but they felt something shift. The restaurant didn't just smell of food anymore. It smelled of hope. Sir Kay sat down again, smiled to himself. He hadn't expected this, not from a single woman asking for scrap. But sometimes, all it takes is one person, one night, one act of grace, and the ripple begins. He picked up his pen and started writing a note. "To Ruth, thank you for waking me up." Day. Ruth sat alone in her living room. The girls were asleep. Their soft breaths filled the space, like a lullaby. The apartment was quiet, but her heart was loud. She glanced at the walls, clean, painted, home. She looked at the fridge. There was food, not much, but enough. Her eyes drifted to the small table near the window. On it sat the letter from Mr. Carlo, the promotion, the new title, the new life. She hadn't framed it yet. She just kept reading it, over and over. "I am more than a cleaner now," she whispered. She stood, walked to the mirror in the hallway, looked at her reflection. Her apron was gone, replaced with a soft blouse, her hair tied neatly, her eyes, less tired. She touched her cheek gently. "Who are you becoming, Ruth?" Not a question of fear, but one of wonder. Her mind drifted back, to cold nights, to plastic bags of leftovers, to her daughters eating while she watched, hungry. Now, she had eaten. Now, they all slept with full bellies. She walked into their room, sat at the edge of the bed, brushed her fingers through their hair. "I promise," she whispered, "you will never sleep hungry again." She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and smiled. It wasn't about the apartment or the promotion. It was about knowing she had survived, and she had done it with dignity. The road ahead would still have bumps, but she wasn't walking alone anymore. Hope was walking beside her, and for once, she wasn't afraid of tomorrow. Day. Friday morning arrived. The restaurant buzzed with curiosity. Every employee had been invited to the staff hall, from the kitchen helpers to the security guards, even the part-time waiters. They gathered in clusters. Whispers floated through the air. "Why did the boss call all of us? Is someone getting fired? Is it about that new program?" Sir Kay entered quietly. No fanfare, just presence. He stood at the front, looked at each face, took a deep breath. "I called this meeting," he began, "because something changed me recently." The room went still. A pin could have dropped. He continued, "Many of you work hard, day after day, quietly, without praise, without notice." He paused, looked down, then back up. "And one night, I followed one of you." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Brows raised, heads turned. I won't name her, but I watched her go home with leftover food, not for herself, but for her children, 2 beautiful girls. A hush fell over the room. She didn't ask for help. She just asked for scraps, and gave all of it to them. He took another breath. I realized I had built a great business, but I hadn't built a great environment. "That changes now," he announced. "New wages, Emergency support, a program for staff with children. People began to nod. Some clapped. A few wiped tears. Ruth stood near the back. She kept her head down, but her hands were trembling. Sir Kay ended the meeting with one final line. Kindness doesn't cost us, but withholding it could cost someone everything. The crowd dispersed, but the message stayed. And for Ruth, that day was more than a meeting. It was a moment of quiet justice.
If this heart-touching story moved you, don't let it be the last. Like, share and subscribe to my channel and keep the emotions flowing. Another heart-touching story is ready for you to listen and enjoy.